The moment everything feels meaningless. There comes a moment in every awakening soul's journey when the world goes silent, not with peace, but with hollowness. The colors fade, the music that once stirred your heart now echoes like background noise. Laughter feels distant, achievements lose their shine, and love, even love, can feel like an echo bouncing off empty walls. This is not depression in its clinical sense, though it may wear a similar mask. This is what Carl Jung referred to as the dark night of the soul, a sacred undoing, a divine unraveling. You are not broken, you are being reborn. In this dark night, your old identity, the roles, the masks, the carefully crafted stories, begins to dissolve. The ego, which once felt like your anchor, slips from your grip. Everything you once clung to for meaning now feels meaningless. And in that terrifying free fall, you begin to understand. The self you thought you were was never truly you. You grieve not just the things you've lost, but the illusions that kept you safe. You grieve the person who tried so hard to be loved, to be right, to be enough. This grief is sacred. Let it wash over you. It is the death of the false self, a necessary death, painful and holy. You are in the void, but this void is not your enemy. It is the womb of your rebirth. It is the place where truth begins to whisper, where your soul, long buried beneath layers of conditioning, begins to stir. The emptiness is not a punishment, it is an initiation. You are not losing your way. You are shedding what no longer serves your becoming. You are descending not into despair, but into depth. And in that depth, the light will not come from outside you. It will emerge from within. The journey has begun. The fire has been lit, not to destroy you, but to reveal you. Welcome to the dark night. Welcome to the beginning. Facing the shadow and not running anymore. As the silence deepens, something unexpected begins to rise from within. Not light, not clarity, but shadow. The parts of you that you've spent a lifetime exiling, the jealousy you denied, the bitterness you buried, the quiet rage that simmered beneath your smile, now step forward from the depths. Not to shame you, but to be seen. You start to recognize how much energy you've spent running from your wounds, your impulses, your darker urges. The person you pretended to be was built on resistance, on avoidance, on the illusion that goodness meant perfection. But perfection is a mask, and masks can't breathe. Now, in the stillness, the shadow speaks. It shows you the times you lied, not out of malice, but fear. The moments you withheld love. The envy you felt when someone else succeeded. The cruelty you inflicted, not because you were evil, but because you were hurting. And for the first time, you don't look away. Carl Jung taught that the shadow is not the enemy of the soul, it is its twin. Not darkness to be destroyed, but wholeness waiting to be reclaimed. Every trait you reject in yourself gathers power in silence. It festers in repression. But when you turn toward it, it softens. It speaks. It transforms. To face the shadow is not to justify it, but to understand it. To ask, what pain created you? What were you trying to protect? And suddenly, the monster under the bed becomes the wounded child. The storm becomes a signal. The anger becomes a boundary that was never spoken. The moment you stop running, the shadow begins to change. And as it changes, so do you. Your compassion deepens, not only for others, but for yourself. You stop demanding perfection and instead seek truth. You realize that what makes you whole is not your light alone, but your willingness to integrate the dark. This is not the path of the saint, it is the path of the real. And in your rawness, in the trembling honesty of your own humanness, you begin to find the very thing you were searching for all along. Freedom. Intense synchronicities begin to occur. Just when you think you're lost, truly lost, something begins to shimmer in the chaos. A song plays on the radio that echoes your exact feelings. A stranger speaks a sentence you were just thinking. You see the same numbers again and again, on clocks, license plates, receipts, everywhere. 1111, 222, 333. Someone from the past randomly reaches out the moment you think of them. A book falls off a shelf that holds the answer you weren't even sure you were seeking. At first, you dismiss these things as coincidence, the mind playing tricks, a kind of psychological bias. But they persist, they repeat, they intensify, and eventually they break through your skepticism and ask a deeper question. What if these aren't accidents? What if you're being spoken to, not with words, but with patterns? Carl Jung called this synchronicity, meaningful coincidences with no logical cause, only an unmistakable psychic resonance. It's as if the universe, or more precisely, your own unconscious, is communicating with you in the only language it knows. Symbols, signs, emotion, pattern. You begin to realize that life is not as random as it once seemed, that beneath the surface of ordinary time lies a web of connection, invisible, intelligent, and alive. And you are being drawn back into alignment with it. Synchronicities don't provide instructions. They don't come with blueprints or guarantees. What they offer is far more powerful, a sense of being seen by something beyond logic, a knowing that you are not alone, a hint that the soul, your soul, is orchestrating moments to remind you who you truly are. These events aren't proof, but invitations. They stir a memory you didn't know you had, the memory of a life with meaning, of a world infused with depth. They awaken intuition. They teach you to listen beyond reason, to trust what feels aligned even if it can't be explained. You begin to follow the breadcrumbs, not with urgency, but reverence. A quote leads you to a book. A chance meeting leads you to a new truth. A dream lingers in your heart and refuses to be ignored. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to co-create with something larger than yourself. Not just reacting to life, but dancing with it. The more you listen, the more synchronicity flows. The more you resist, the more chaotic it feels. Because synchronicity is not about control, it's about attunement. This is not superstition. This is the sacred intelligence of the psyche, speaking in the native language of the soul, imagery, rhythm, story, sensation. You are not imagining it. You are remembering it. The symbols are real. The guidance is real. You are not walking blind. You are being led. Not by chance, by design. Relationships begin to break down. Awakening doesn't just change the way you see the world. It changes the way you show up in it. The masks begin to fall. The performances that once kept others comfortable, the agreeable smile, the silence that swallowed your truth, the constant shrinking to fit someone else's version of love. They all begin to dissolve, and with that, something painful happens. Your relationships begin to shift. Some begin to strain, some begin to collapse. People may say you've changed, and they're right, you have. But what they really mean is that you've stopped being who they needed you to be for their comfort. You've stopped contorting your soul to meet expectations. You've stopped abandoning yourself in the name of being nice, easy, or lovable. Carl Jung once wrote, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." That darkness includes the truth hiding in your relationships, the patterns, the power plays, the quiet betrayals you once tolerated just to feel wanted. Now your soul won't let you lie. You see it clearly. The friend who only calls when they need something. The partner who claims to love you but shames your sensitivity. The family member who praises your obedience but not your authenticity. And you finally ask, is this love or is this control disguised as care? This realization breaks something open. You no longer have the tolerance to fake affection. You no longer offer your energy out of obligation. You no longer mistake attachment for connection. And in doing so, you begin to lose what is false, not as punishment, but as liberation. It hurts deeply, sometimes more than anything else on this path, because even unhealthy relationships offered comfort, even toxic love held familiar warmth. But you are not here to settle for survival. You are here to remember who you are, and that kind of remembrance will always disrupt what was built on forgetting. Some people will leave, some will resist your growth, some will mock your journey or accuse you of being selfish, dramatic, or distant. Let them. You are not abandoning them, you are reclaiming you. And something else happens too. As the false falls away, space opens. For people who see you clearly, who meet you where you are, not where they wish you would stay. Who do not fear your truth, but honor it. These souls don't demand your silence. They sit with your voice. This is the sacred breakdown, the purification of connection. And though it may feel like your heart is breaking, it is actually breaking open. You are not losing love. You are learning how to finally receive the real thing. You feel drawn to spiritual symbolism and dreams. As the outer world becomes uncertain, the inner world begins to shimmer with a quiet, radiant language of its own. At night, your dreams shift, no longer fragments of random thought, but visions soaked in meaning. You find yourself waking with your heart pounding, tears in your eyes, or a strange peace you cannot explain. The dreams speak in riddles, a child with glowing eyes, a snake shedding its skin, a staircase that vanishes mid-climb, an ocean that pulls you under and then teaches you to breathe. You used to dismiss your dreams. Now you feel them pulling you closer, like whispers from an ancient part of yourself, one that knows what the waking self forgets. Carl Jung believed that dreams are direct messages from the unconscious, rich with archetypes, universal symbols that reflect the deeper layers of the psyche. The mother, the trickster, the shadow, the wise old man, the divine child. These are not just figures from mythology, they are pieces of you trying to come home. Your soul begins to speak in symbols, not just in sleep, but in waking life. You notice recurring images, the feather, the moon, the serpent, the mirror. They follow you, appear when you least expect, echo in your journal, your thoughts, your art. They are not coincidences, they are keys. And you begin to listen, not with your intellect alone, but with your intuition. You stop looking for textbook definitions. You start asking softer questions. What does this symbol stir in me? What memory does it awaken? What part of me does it mirror? Because this is not about analysis, it is about relationship. A symbol is not an answer, it is a portal. And through that portal, your soul reaches back to you. You may find yourself drawn to old myths, sacred geometry, alchemical images, mandalas, ancient languages, even dreams of animals that once terrified you. You begin to feel that everything around you, and within you, is layered with meaning. If only you have the courage to look deeper. The rational mind will resist. It wants to know why. It wants logic. It wants certainty. But the soul speaks through images because images can hold contradiction, emotion, mystery, the things the intellect cannot grasp. In this new language, a tear can mean release. A door can mean death and rebirth. Fire can mean destruction or purification, sometimes both. You're not just dreaming, you're remembering. Remembering that your inner world is alive, that your unconscious is not a void, but a temple, that your symbols are sacred, personal, and powerful, and only you can translate them. This is not fantasy. This is soul literacy. This is the forgotten language of the heart waking up again, and once it begins, you can never unsee the symbols. You can only follow them. Deeper, inward, home. Deep craving for authenticity. There comes a moment when pretending becomes unbearable. The smile you used to wear so effortlessly now feels heavy on your face. The roles you played, the peacemaker, the achiever, the caretaker, the one who's fine, begin to crumble under the weight of your own silence. Something within you refuses to lie anymore. You crave truth. Not the polished truth of surface-level conversations, but the raw, trembling, inconvenient kind, the kind that strips you down to your essence. This is the sacred beginning of individuation, a process Carl Jung described as the journey of becoming the true self. It is not about becoming someone better, it is about becoming real, about peeling away everything you thought you had to be in order to survive, and finding out who you were before the world told you who to become. You no longer chase approval like oxygen. You no longer dress your words in palatable politeness just to be accepted. You no longer silence your truth just to keep the peace, because now you understand peace without truth is just another form of bondage. And though this process is liberating, it is not painless. As you take off the mask, you begin to feel everything more deeply. Grief for the years you abandoned yourself. Anger for the times you said yes when your soul screamed no. Shame for the ways you betrayed your own spirit just to feel loved. But beneath all that, something else emerges. Life, raw, real, untamed life. You begin to speak with your real voice, sometimes shaky, sometimes fierce, always true. You start asking different questions. What do I really feel? What do I actually want? Who am I when no one is watching? There's a kind of quiet joy that comes from telling the truth, a joy that doesn't come from being liked, but from being whole. You begin to build relationships rooted not in performance, but in presence. You begin to choose work that reflects your values, not just your resume. You start to listen to your body, your intuition, your soul, and you finally start to trust yourself. You will lose some things in this process. False friendships, superficial validation, illusions of safety. But what you gain is you. Authenticity doesn't mean perfection. It means honesty. It means no longer fragmenting yourself just to fit in. It means becoming who you truly are, not who the world trained you to be. And in this becoming, you don't just feel more yourself. You finally feel alive. Because the real you was never meant to live behind a mask. The real you was meant to rise, vulnerable, radiant, and unapologetically true. Emotional storms that lead to clarity awakening does not arrive as peace wrapped in soft light. It comes as a storm. You find yourself suddenly overwhelmed, not by external events, but by a tide of emotions long buried beneath your surface. One moment you're calm, the next you're sobbing uncontrollably. Anger erupts in your chest without warning. Old memories surface like ghosts demanding to be seen. Joy flares up unexpectedly, followed by a wave of guilt. Confusion becomes your constant companion. You begin to wonder, am I losing myself? But this chaos is the beginning of healing. Carl Jung knew this truth well. He wrote that the psyche must pass through upheaval, must descend into its own depths, in order to transform. There is no evolution without disruption. The soul cannot awaken in silence alone. It must feel its way out of the cage. This is the purge, not of logic, but of all the emotion you repressed just to survive. The grief you buried under busyness. The rage you swallowed for the sake of keeping peace. The joy you muted because you thought you didn't deserve it. The pain you wore like armor because it kept you safe. It all rises. At once. It is not madness. It is the soul's detox. The nervous system shakes. The body remembers what the mind denied. You tremble, not from weakness, but from release. You are shedding years of silence, guilt, compliance. It's loud, it's messy, and it doesn't follow a neat timeline. But slowly, through the tears, through the tremors, something shifts. You begin to see yourself more clearly. There is clarity born of this emotional chaos, not the kind that comes from solving problems, but the kind that comes from feeling the truth that lives beneath your wounds. You realize you were never broken, only buried. You see which parts of you were never yours to carry, which emotions belonged to someone else, which beliefs were inherited, not chosen. You start to separate your true voice from the voices that once controlled you. And in this emotional wildfire, the illusions burn away. What remains is real. You learn to sit with your emotions instead of silencing them. You begin to trust that tears are not weakness, but wisdom. You stop labeling your feelings as bad or good and start listening to what they're telling you. And through it all, a quiet strength awakens, a deeper self that no longer fears the storm because it knows the storm was never against you. The storm was you. It came to clear the lies, to wash away the masks, to return you to yourself. And when it passes, and it will pass, you'll notice the sky within you looks different, clearer, wider, real. Not because the chaos is gone, but because now you're no longer running from it. You're walking through it, awake. You see the world as a mirror. One day, almost without warning, you stop blaming the world and begin to see it, not as random, not as cruel, but as a mirror. Each encounter, each trigger, each sharp irritation that slices through your peace becomes a message, a reflection. You begin to realize the things that disturb me in others are often the shadows I've disowned in myself. The arrogance that enrages you mirrors your suppressed desire to stand tall. The clinginess you judge echoes your own abandoned need for closeness. The coldness that cuts touches the parts of you that had to numb themselves to survive. This shift is not comfortable. In fact, it's excruciating. because suddenly the entire architecture of blame starts to collapse. Carl Jung wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." And when this truth finally lands in your bones, you begin to ask different questions. Why does this hurt so much? What part of me is being revealed right now? What have I not yet accepted about myself? At first, it feels like betrayal, the realization that you are not merely the wounded, but also the wounder, that you too project, that you too judge, that you too have acted unconsciously. But soon this awareness becomes your liberation, because now you no longer live at the mercy of others' actions. You no longer wait for the world to change in order to feel peace. You begin the quiet, radical work of changing your inner world. When you see your reactions as revelations, not just emotional outbursts, but invitations to heal, you reclaim your power. Triggers become teachers, discomfort becomes a doorway, and you begin to meet life with curiosity rather than control. That person who annoys you, they are your mirror, reflecting the edges of your soul you've not yet softened with love. That situation that keeps repeating, it is your soul's echo, asking you to respond differently this time. This path requires immense honesty. It demands that you stop pointing outward and begin turning inward. And with each brave look into the mirror, something beautiful happens. You begin to see yourself with compassion. You recognize that your shadow isn't your enemy. It is your unloved self, begging for your presence. And when you stop running from it, when you hold it, listen to it, understand it, you no longer need to see the world as a battleground. It becomes what it always was, a reflection of your own evolution. So now, when life unsettles you, you pause, not to judge, not to react, but to see. Because in every reflection, no matter how distorted, you are being shown the next piece of your truth, the next step in your becoming. And this is not punishment. This is grace. You seek wholeness, not perfection. There comes a moment when the mask of perfection becomes too heavy to wear. You begin to sense that striving to be flawless is no longer a noble goal, but a quiet violence against your soul. Perfection once felt like safety, a place where you would finally be worthy, finally be loved, finally be enough. But now, it feels empty. You no longer crave to be admired. You long to be understood. This is the sacred pivot. Carl Jung understood this turning point well. He said, "I'd rather be whole than good," because good is often performance. It's compliance. It's shrinking your truth to fit someone else's idea of love. But wholeness is wild. It's honest. It includes the light and the dark, the mess and the beauty. It doesn't ask, "How can I fix myself?" It asks, "Can I hold all of myself just as I am?" You stop dissecting your soul like a broken machine. You stop seeing your flaws as enemies. You stop trying to carve out the parts that don't please others. Instead, you begin the slow, courageous work of integration. The rage you used to hide. You listen to it and find boundaries waiting underneath. The shame you tried to outrun. You sit beside it and realize it carries stories of childhood pain. The jealousy that embarrassed you. You follow it and discover the dreams you abandoned long ago. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is wrong. Everything belongs. You realize that healing is not becoming better. It's becoming truer. It's not about creating a polished version of yourself. It's about coming home to the self you were before the world told you who to be. And in that homecoming, something radical happens. You soften. You begin to see the divine not in your achievements, but in your acceptance. Not in your image, but in your essence. The goal is no longer to be the most impressive person in the room. The goal is to be the most real. And in your realness, others feel safe to be real too. Wholeness invites connection. Perfection isolates. Wholeness says, "Here I am, sacred, scarred, and still worthy." It allows contradictions to exist. It forgives the past. It welcomes the unknown. It whispers, "You do not need to be fixed. You need to be met." And so, as you walk forward on this journey, you carry less armor and more honesty. Less illusion and more integration. Less striving and more surrender. You are not here to impress the world. You are here to embody yourself, fully, fiercely, and without apology. This is the path of wholeness, not clean, not perfect, but real. And in that realness, you find peace. You start guiding others. Silently, there comes a time on the soul's journey when you stop needing to explain yourself. You no longer shout truths from rooftops, no longer convince or correct. Instead, you simply are. And that quiet authenticity, that embodied stillness, begins to ripple through others, not by force, not by design, but by resonance. You begin to notice people leaning in. They ask different kinds of questions now, not about facts, but about being. They don't want answers as much as they want presence, your presence. You don't wear a teacher's robe. You don't label yourself a guide. But without trying, you've become one. Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And when you do, when you strip away the false layers and stand in your essence, people feel it. Even if they can't name it, they sense the permission you give simply by existing as yourself. Because in your stillness, they glimpse their own possibility. In your honesty, they remember their own longing. In your presence, they feel safe to unfold. You are no longer trying to change people. You are holding space. You are no longer offering advice. You are offering alignment. Your energy says, it's okay to not know yet. It's okay to fall apart. It's okay to be exactly where you are. You've become a silent mirror, reflecting not who they pretend to be, but who they could be if they chose truth over fear. This kind of guidance doesn't require words. It doesn't sparkle or perform. It walks barefoot. It listens. It waits.